Sorry guys, I couldn't resist a good bit of clickbait, but it is a genuine question to which I am now going to find out the answer. The Fiesta ST. It's one of those very rare cars that in my opinion has become a legend in its own lifetime, having now just been replaced by the 8th generation version. I, as usual, am late to this party, but this car's reputation is such that I have been absolutely desperate to drive one since I started the channel. But it's taken until now for that opportunity to arise, and it's with this very well presented, reasonably low mileage Mountune SP215 equipped car, kindly loaned me by my friend Alex at Stratton Motor Company. This car's not for sale, not yet anyway, it's his personal car, so a big shout out and thank you to him for letting me have a go in it. This car joins the likes of the Golf R, the E46 M3 and the Mazda MX-5 in being the default answer to a commonly asked question. In this case, if you're a young petrol head and you want something practical and fun, what should you buy? Sure, there are rivals from things like a Bath with the 595 or Vauxhall with the Corsa VXR, which is certainly the most direct rival to this car. But none of them have been able to replicate the Fiesta's absolutely crazy success. I don't have any numbers for production figures on these cars, but I don't need them. I see them all the time. They are everywhere. People just love them. And a lot of the people that own one of these have probably graduated from the 1-litre EcoBoost, so they're well into that whole Ford family. And the funny thing is, you'd think a lot of guys would then want to progress from one of these onto something like a Focus ST or a Focus RS. But actually, there's a lot of guys that are really wedded to the little Fiesta. And that doesn't just mean 19-year-olds either who can't afford something better. I'm talking about car journalists who have driven all sorts of things from Polos to Paganis. They have a real soft spot for this little Ford. And now I get to see why. But before I do that, I'm going to just recap what makes this car. So the 1.6 litre motor in this car by default generates just shy of 200 horsepower. This Mountune equipped car is 215 horsepower with a very healthy 236 pound-foot of torque, or about 320 newton meters if you like your torques delivered in a metric fashion. Now the interesting thing about this kit, which comprises a performance airbox, an uprated air filter, a better hose somewhere in the engine bay, and a remap, is the fact that you could get it from your Ford dealer. If they were a Mountune certified dealer, when you were buying these cars new or as an aftermarket option, you would go to them, you'd pay around £600, they'd fit the kit, and best of all, it would not affect your warranty one bit. Now, I'm not saying that Ford were encouraging people to modify these cars, but that's really what people love them for, isn't it? And when you've got factory approved modifications like that, well, it's just opening the floodgates, isn't it? Now, the reason I suspect that Ford allow people to tune these cars within the warranty, if you've got approved tuning packages, is because that engine is good for a lot more than the 200 horsepower that it leaves the factory gates with. In fact, I know several people running over 300 horsepower in their Fiestas, and I don't hear of those engines blowing up. They seem to be very, very well built. Inside, it's a Ford, which is to say, it's all right. There are some nice touches like these half leather Recaro seats and the sort of sporty looking aluminium trim that's all over the place, but generally speaking, I don't think anyone at Alfa Romeo is going to be kept up long into the night wondering what new funky interior is going to be coming from the Blue Oval. This is pretty safe, and this really is the place where the car shows its humble, mid-range, small hatchback, cheap car origins more than anywhere else. In fact, my possible least favourite part of the entire car is this stereo. The screen is frustratingly tiny, and trying to choose a DAB radio station is so impossibly difficult that I thought about doing a video on it, and then I realized that actually most of you tune out after about 7 minutes anyway, so I just wouldn't have the time to try and explain how it works. It is indescribably badly designed. But I don't think anyone's really buying these cars for the stereo. Besides, most of the people that buy these cars probably want to put in their own speakers to enjoy their banging tunes anyway. What I'm interested about as crusty old nearly 30-something man is just how it drives. Now that clickbaity title of mine is a very genuine question, and this, by the way, is genuinely the first time I have driven one of these cars. I have not actually even driven a cooking Fiesta either, so this is a very, very new experience for me. The closest thing that I've come is driving my grandfather's 1.6 automatic B-Max, which is a close relative of the Fiesta. The interior and that is all basically the same. And when you get a car that sells not just in the quantity that this does, but with supporters that are as vocal about their cars as they are of this, that means one of two things. Either people have just been hoodwinked into thinking something's great when it's not, or it's actually that damn good. And that's what I intend to find out right about now, because I'm heading towards a road that I've tested some of the finest driving cars known to man on. It's a road buried in Norfolk. If you know it, you know it. Keep it quiet. And I've taken a load of Lotus down there, I've taken Aston Martins down there, I've taken BMWs down there, I've taken all sorts of things down there. And today, although it is the middle of November, it is a relatively warm day. The roads have just about started to dry off now, so I'm giving this car the best possible chance to impress me. Now, before we get onto that road, I can tell you a few things. First off, car pulls quite nicely. That was a fourth gear pull from about 50 to 60 mile an hour as the speed limit changed, and did pretty good to me. I've just been filming the review of the Nissan Juke Nismo, which has the same power, actually isn't that much heavier, and that certainly didn't feel anywhere near as sprightly as this. Probably due to the fact that this, with the Mountune kit, has an extra 40 pound-foot of torque. That's a not insignificant amount to be getting from the same engine configuration. Now, the driving position is also pretty good. You do sit a touch high for my liking, but the seats are very good. I will confess that although I am very much about the interior, there are a couple of things that Ford get right, and they seem to habitually get right. Those are the seats, because these Recaros are very, very nice. They support me well, they seem comfy enough, they're reasonably firm but not too hard. And the steering, now at town speed the steering is very, very light, and car box speed very light. I don't know whether it's electronic or mechanical assistance, and the truth of the matter is that I could have looked it up, but I don't actually care, because what I care about is what the steering feels like. I've driven cars with electric assistance, I've driven cars with hydraulic assistance, I've driven cars with no assistance. I don't actually care by what method it provides the assistance or not. I simply care about how it feels, and that's all you guys should care about too. Someone in the comments, please feel free to tell me whether it is electric or hydraulic, and you guys can discuss that yourselves. But the off-center turn is quite quick. It's very keen to turn, so things are already looking pretty good for the little Fiesta. Let's just see whether it can cope with this road that is a nice mix of tight, twisty kind of corners where I would expect and hope that this car would do well, and the longer, straighter stuff where more power tends to impress, and that I'm not expecting it to do so well, but it's not going to be too much of an issue if it doesn't. You can place the car nice and easily, and the ride's actually pretty pleasant too. It's very easy for manufacturers to just want to make their cars very, very stiff so that they perform well on a track, and people say, oh yeah, they're really sporty in it, and that's not actually what sporty means. But this is off to a very good start. So I'm going to shut up for a minute and go around some corners. follows ruts with some enthusiasm when you're on the power. But I can tell you already, with complete confidence, that in that short section, I have reached my conclusion about the Fiesta ST. Is it the most overrated car ever? Or is it just that bloody good? It's awesome. I love it. I hate myself. I hate myself for it. Every time I see one of these things, I go, oh God, one unoriginal little 19, 20-year-old, he's gone and bought a bloody Fiesta ST and he's bolted some shit to it, and you know, he thinks he's different from everyone else, and I'm sure it's just a piddly, silly little car. No, I take it all back, every single word. I will have a crate of humble pie later. This thing is fantastic. You can heel and toe in it, it turns keenly, it bites nicely. You know what? The engine is not the best thing in the world, but that's fine. It works really well in the mid-range, and it gives up at about $6,000 or so, but that's fine because it's got so much punch. You can work the gearbox, and the gearbox is really nice too. 6-speed manual, and I wouldn't want anything else in a car like this. I'm not the sort of person that will say manual or death. I believe that you need an appropriate gearbox for the vehicle that you're in. It's why my M3, for what I use it for, I chose a double clutch box, and why in this, I believe this is exactly the box that you should have. It sounds pretty decent too. That steering's fairly alive. This road's got a reasonable amount of camber on it, and when you're on that power, it's darting around and doing this sort of thing. But just as a driving experience, if I want to find fault with this car, of course I can find fault. It'd be really easy to do that because you just basically pick the things that are wrong with any other model in the Fiesta lineup. Yeah, the sort of cheap, scratchy, nasty, horrible, typical Ford plastics, the totally indecipherable and horrifically cheap looking stereo, you know, all that sort of stuff. But the fact of the matter is, I don't care. I really don't care. You see, for me, this is the sort of experience that I should have had when I drove the Abarth 595. People keep telling me I got that car wrong, and they keep telling me it's the most fun car they've ever driven. Well, for me, I just didn't have that. And I'm in similar conditions today. I drove that car on very cold roads, and it's not exactly warm today. It's about 9 degrees out there. And I'm having a whale of a time. This is not my car, and I'll happily say I'm driving it with some enthusiasm. Alex, thank you again for letting me have a go in it. I can't believe I've waited this long to try one of these, but it amazes me that the same company made this and the Focus RS, because to me, the Focus RS is, and yeah, they're having some issues with the Focus RS. Let's be honest there. Ford definitely don't get every single one right, but this one, pick your metaphor, you know, knock it out of the park, home run, you know, just whatever you want. It just is ace. And you know, I had this whole spiel prepared about criticizing it because, you know, one of the things that appeals to people is the massive aftermarket scene for them, and that's definitely one of the reasons that people would be attracted to them. And granted, a lot of people that are going to drive one of these maybe haven't had the experience that I've been fortunate enough to have of driving all these other different cars, and they don't know what cars with epic steering feel like. Well, they do now because they've driven this. This is really good. But my only real criticism then is that, unfortunately, a lot of the modified STs that I see tend to be pretty much the same. And honestly, the standard car is pretty bloody good. I'd love to try a heavily modified one and see how it changes the character of the car. Honestly, on a day like today, the main thing that I'd say this car needs is a limited slip differential. With greasy conditions and a fairly healthy amount of torque, the car is quite keen to spin up a wheel, with the traction control then sapping a little bit of the power away from you, but otherwise the drive is very hard to fault. I'm not a hatchback person. Anyone that watches the channel will know that. Really, generally not interested in them at all. But if someone's coming to me and they want a hot hatch, get a Fiesta ST. God, I hate going with the crowd, but on this one, they were right. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. If you want to know more practical and boring things about the car, fuel economy figures, boot space, all that sort of stuff, there's loads more reviews around, but I just wanted to know what it drove like, and now I know. Thank you so much. Please hit the like button if you haven't already. Please leave a comment below, especially if you have one of these or you've modified it, especially if you happen to live locally to me and you'd like to see it on the channel, because I'd love to come and review it. For now though, I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.